new Pandamoon author, DC Palter. He's in California. Tell us a little bit about yourself, DC.
Sure. Yeah, it's a little bit all over the place. I started off as an engineer, ended up getting into the marketing side, spent some time in Japan, then got into startups, and it's been in startups for the past 20 years and had a couple successes there. And that kind of took me to investing in other startups and mentoring startups. And at the same time, I've been writing and also teaching Japanese. So, that keeps me busy. A little bit of everything.
You've got a book that we've acquired at Pandamoon, and the title of it is To Kill a Unicorn, right?
Yes, that's right.
Can you explain what a unicorn actually is?
Yes, for the people who are not in Silicon Valley or startups, so the technical definition is a unicorn is a company, a private company that's worth more than $1 billion, has a valuation of more than $1 billion. There's also, there's a decacorn, which is a unicorn that's gotten to a $10 billion valuation, and a petacorn, which is when you make it to 100 million. Lately, a bunch of unicorns have been going public. The past few days, we've seen a lot of press of things like Airbnb going public. So Airbnb was a big unicorn.
Of course, there's a conflict involved, otherwise you wouldn't really have it.
Yes, there wouldn't be much of a novel if it wasn't a conflict.
The characters finding out a lot about a unicorn, a company, and trying to remedy a situation where the customers are actually dying as a result of something that the unicorn company is producing. Is that the basic gist? Or
that's kind of it. So yeah, let me give you a little bit more detail. So this hacker, young guy just out of MIT, his ex-girlfriend, his childhood sweetheart, shows up one day and says, "My brother is missing. Can you help me find him?" And, of course, he's busy with work. He's busy playing video games, and he's a little bit, his ex-girlfriend is here, and he's like, why is she back? He still has feelings for her, but you know how these things are. And, then of course, he can't refuse her, so he starts looking into, because he's a hacker, he starts hacking into the brother's email and other places, and everything has been deleted. So now he's really worried. Before he thought, the ex-girlfriend was just being worried for no reason, but basically all existence of him has been deleted, and now he's worried too. So he starts looking into the brother's life and finds that he was a physicist working at one of the hottest startups in Silicon Valley, as a company called SuperDuper. And I'm not sure how much to give away, but I'll just say they have invented teleportation. But they're very secretive about it. They don't want anyone to know what's going on there. They say it's, we can't let our secrets out because somebody will copy us. He's a little suspicious, but he's trying to find his ex-girlfriend's brother, which is actually his childhood friend too. So he ends up joining the company and starts realizing that the way their technology works has some side effects that they are keeping secret, and he's got to dig into it. In the meantime, the company has a lot of they have a lot of friends, let's just say that, around Silicon Valley. There's a lot of money at stake. There's a lot of investors' money at stake. There's a lot of people they've brought on board with free shares who are advising the company, and they have a lot at stake, and they don't want the cat to get out of the bag. So he's now got to find a way to figure out what's going on and then show the world what's going on without end up disappearing like his friend. So that's the long version of the story description. It's a mystery, but it's really the life of a hacker computer programmer in Silicon Valley. We're really talking about the corruption that money has brought to Silicon Valley in the past few years. And have you happened to have read the book called Bad Blood about Theranos? Have you heard of that?
no.
Okay, they made a documentary about it as well on HBO called The Inventor. It was a startup in Silicon Valley. There's been a bunch of scandals in Silicon Valley, but this is the most notorious one. It was about a company that said they had invented a way of testing for like 135 different diseases in one drop of blood. And it turns out they had intended to do it, but they told everyone they had already did it. They sold it to a bunch of companies like CVS and Walgreens, and it didn't actually work. And there were some side effects of that. That was more about fraud. This isn't fraud per se. This technology actually works, but there's some downsides they have to keep secret.
I would assume that it's a Star Trek teleporter type thing and a point-to-point transmission.
Yes, except it's in a room, and you have to go from one room to, you can go anywhere, but you have to start from inside the teleporter, so you can't be pulled into the teleporter. So it's a little different than Star Trek, but it's the same idea, and it's based on Higgs bosons, how the subatomic physics works.
And all the space between atoms in your body.
Yeah, I didn't go into that. Really just talked about the duality of pairs of Higgs bosons. But the physics doesn't really matter. And I don't go into much detail into it. It's just simply they've invented this wonderful new technology, but it's got some downsides that they're hiding.
It sounds like it's right up my alley.
Yes.
Kind of known for writing strange stories.
Yeah, this would fall into that category, and it wasn't quite sure what it was going to be when it grew up as I started writing it.
How long did you spend in Asia?
It's a total of about 5 years through a couple of different stints.
Now, did you know Japanese before you went there?
I did not. I picked up one of those textbooks like Berlitz or something, and I had gone through a couple chapters, but fundamentally I didn't know any when I went there, and everyone around me thought I was crazy.
Of course.
Yes.
Yeah, I used to get the same reaction from people when I told them I was learning Chinese, and they go, "Oh, that must be hard."
Chinese must be hard. As someone who's learned Japanese, Chinese must be hard.
It's really not. The spoken language is really pretty simple.
I don't know. Those tones would kill me.
No, you get used to it. When you're speaking at normal conversational speed, the tones tend to flatten out anyway. So you're pulling down from context more than anything else at that point. And of course, Americans that are learning Chinese think that the language is difficult because of the tones. Most words in Chinese are 2 or 3 characters. So, I mean, other than like scientific and medical terms, which can be several characters long. There's also an attempt to phoneticize other languages in terms of their own characters. So those actually I found to be the biggest challenge in the language, was learning those things. I mean, it's a very straightforward language. You don't have to conjugate verbs because the concept of tense is done with aspect markers. The spoken language is easy. The written language is a challenge because you have to figure out how to make a character, how to write it, how to.
Yeah, how many do you have to learn to be relatively fluent? Like 10,000?
To get to about a 6-year-old level, you probably learn about 2,000 or 3,000 characters, and you're probably good to go. You can speak baby talk. Probably somewhere between 5,000 and 10,000 characters is what you would need to be proficient in, like reading a newspaper.
Right. That's what I've heard. It's about 10,000. So Japanese is actually simpler because you only have to learn about 1,500 characters. And anything that isn't a traditional word, and the same way as Chinese, most words are a combination of 2 characters. And in fact, actually, there's a lot of overlap between Japanese words and Chinese words because so much of Japanese came from Chinese. But then anything that doesn't fit within those 1,500 characters gets phoneticized. And there's a whole separate phonetic language of 50 characters. And
well, it's good to know that if I want to learn Mandarin or Japanese, I have 2 people to come to. Yeah,
and it's just not as difficult as you would think. And Japanese, the grammar is pretty simple too. A little bit tougher than Chinese, but it's got a few conjugations, but really not very many. So it makes it pretty simple.
So tell us about your journey to how did you find us?
I actually found Zara on LinkedIn.
Okay.
I spend most of my life, my professional life, on LinkedIn, looking for customers, looking for contacts, people contacting me. For professional stuff, it's kind of the social media that usually gets used. Not the way for authors looking for agents and publishers. But I ran across her there, and I looked at her profile, and I'm like, wow, okay, a publishing company that's run like a startup, and everything in there was how she had worked, how she had kind of started other companies before in the tech industry and used that to really kind of try to revolutionize the way the publishing industry works. And I'm like, yeah, this is the place for me. I'm a writer about startups in Silicon Valley, and if somebody is going to get this book, it's not going to be the big New York houses of English majors. It's going to be somebody like Zara. So, I connected with her on LinkedIn, which none of the agents or publishers will do. You try to connect to them on LinkedIn. It's just like, I don't connect with people I haven't signed up with. But she connected with me, and I'm like, I didn't know that you were looking for new books at the time. I think you were in the process of switching between the old website and the new website. And the old website, it said, contact us again next year. And I'm like, it's a shame that you're not looking for something right now, because I think my book about, hackers in Silicon Valley would be kind of perfect for what you do. And she's like, oh no, we're looking for new stuff right now. Let's shoot it over. I'm like, this is the place for me. Yes.
Oh, it was totally meant to be.
It felt like home from the beginning. So,
well, welcome.
Yes, I'm thrilled to be part of the team, part of the family.
Yeah, I believe you and I have connected on LinkedIn.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, I saw your profile picture and I was like, CC. So it was exciting. I'm glad to have you aboard.
Glad to be here. I'm really looking forward to it.
Yes. So what is your inspiration? Like, where do you find your inspiration for writing?
So this book had a long journey. I spent 3 years writing To Kill a Unicorn through not 4 drafts, but 4 different novels, 3 of which ended up in the trash pile because they didn't work. I got 200 pages into the story on 3 different occasions, and there was no ending. It didn't work. And then I finally said, okay, this is just too crazy. I can't figure it out. I do need to kind of follow some standard structure. And what is this going to be? Is it going to be science fiction? Is it going to be a mystery? Is it going to be noir? And I said, well, fundamentally it's a mystery. So let's turn this into a mystery. And so I kind of pulled together those, 600 pages of other stuff and took a little bit here and a little bit there and kind of rewrote a lot of it. And I said, okay, I know what it is. I'm writing it now. And just from that point on, I just sat down and pounded it out. But the first 3 drafts, literally had me in tears. Whenever you watch a movie or a TV show about a writer, they sit there with their pad of paper and they're like, crumple it up and they throw it away, and they crumple up the next one, they throw it away. I'm like, no one ever does that. That's not how writers write.
Yeah, not anymore. You don't use paper.
Well, I actually literally did that. I sat in my bed with a pad of paper and I tried writing, like, how is this going to work? And I was like, no, that doesn't work. And I threw it away. And it was like 1 or 2 of those a day, just tearing my hair out. My wife didn't want to be near me because I was kind of grumpy. I finally said, it's been staring me at the face all along. It's not the story I wanted to write, but it is the story that wants to be written. So once I made that decision to say, let's write the story it wants to be, then it became easy. And the story that I tried to write.
You now just defined exactly the journey of
a
fiction writer.
Yeah. What I wanted to write, and one day I'm still going to write it, what this started off was magical realism story set in Silicon Valley, where random things happened and nobody knows why. And it turns out to be a battle between a toaster that thinks it's God and the devil, who is a little chihuahua. Which is actually, so the chihuahua is still in the novel. And it was a guy, so these random things were happening and the devil dog didn't understand him. So he hired a detective to figure out what was going on. But then once I figured out what was going on, it's like, okay, but that's not the story that it was supposed to be. That was a story not about magical realism and a toaster that thought it was God, but about a startup that was just deceiving people. A lot more prosaic.
I don't know. I kind of like the toaster that thinks it's God.
Yeah, so that's the title of another novel that I still have to write.
You got to write it. I cannot wait. I'm excited.
Yeah. I would definitely read that.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. So what else? Do you have anything else in the works? Like, do you have any other ideas that you're...
So I'm already started on the follow-up. The great thing about Pandamoon is you guys love series, and I had an idea that had been pretty well fleshed out. I'd actually written a draft of it about, well, it was right before 9/11, and it was about the NSA doing things the NSA is not supposed to be doing legally, which we found out about from Snowden. And so, the world has changed since then, but I'm taking that and turning that into another mystery from our two main characters in this novel. So it may be called, the tentative title is To Kill a Patriot, but that's not settled yet. We'll have to see what the story turns out to be when I get to the end.
It's kind of amazing how the title comes along as you're writing. I feel like sometimes, you start out with one idea of what you want, and then as you go, it's just like, it's like
it evolves.
Moment.
Yeah. So the first three versions of To Kill a Unicorn were named the Higgs Bogon, but that was...
I love the title that you chose.
Thank you.
It's really catchy. It's going to be something that people are going to want to read because, it's a great title. So I think you chose well.
Thank you.
It's going to be great for marketing.
We're going to have to do something with the cover design to indicate what it's about because of the...
Oh, we can... yeah.
But, we were... While you were having connection problems, Christine, we were talking about the challenge that, somebody's going to pick up the book and think that it's a fantasy about unicorns. And so that's going to be our challenge, is to convince, to tell people what genre it is. It's a mystery.
I think that as cover play is going to come into this heavily, but our artists, if you've taken a look at some of our book covers, Faith On is fantastic cover, and they did such a good job because it explained the book, because it looks like code on the front with symbols. So, but obviously it's it's got fairies. So
that series is also about hackers. It's about a couple of hackers. There's a company, a high-tech company. This is Faith On. There's actually 2 books in the series right now. But in Faith On, there's a product that's being brought to market by a company that's be-all, end-all cell phone.
Yeah.
And
I have a company like that in my story.
The cell phone is not a traditional cell phone by any stretch of the imagination.
Right.
It's actually powered by a fairy.
Oh, okay. That's very different.
It's got some magical,
right.
undertones in there. So, but
our
our cover artists are fantastic. They can take a title and they can take the story and they just put it together. And it's quite amazing to watch the process. Basically what will happen is they're going to ask you to give them some ideas of how you would like it to be. And then they kind of work off of that. And it's really nice because Pandamoon does allow the author to have quite a bit of say in their cover, which is fantastic.
Yeah, there's a questionnaire that you fill out, and then you attach some covers that you like and some covers that you don't like, so that the cover designer gets an idea of what actually appeals to you. And also you can create some input, like Christine was saying about, maybe a scene that's key in the book that you think would make a good cover. Because unfortunately what you're doing with the cover is you're trying to convey what's happening in the story, but you can only take like one frame of an entire story. So
yes, that's a challenge.
If you try to put too much of the story into the cover, then it gets too busy and too confusing. So the first cover that we designed for one of my books was a little too busy.
No way. I still love that's still one of my favorite covers.
Yeah, that's the original Fried Windows cover had
Fried
rainbows
Windows
and
light
pots
white
of gold.
sauce.
And I come up with really strange titles.
I'll have to read them.
So what would you say was the hardest, the absolute, one thing that frustrated you during the writing process?
The one thing, as opposed to the 100 things?
Yeah, there's like 100 things that are competing for.
Yeah, well, the main thing that had me tearing my hair out was the story was not going in the direction that I wanted the story to go, and I beat my head against that for 2 years until I finally gave up on that.
Yeah, you have to submit to the idea that the story is going to tell itself.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so funny how the story, it writes the way it wants to be written. And if you try to write it your way, it says no.
Yes, exactly.
You have to get to the point where you realize that the characters that you're writing about are real. They have to be real in your mind, otherwise you're not going to be able to deal with them in a manner that convinces the reader that they're real.
Yeah, that was not a problem for me because I started from the characters. In fact, the characters came to me. They were not what I intended from the beginning, especially the main character, whose name is Ted Hara. He's Japanese American. I had originally, started off with traditional detective along the lines of a Chinatown, Jack Nicholson. That's what I had in mind, or Rockford. But he kept on speaking Japanese. He kept on telling Japanese jokes. And then I realized, okay, it wasn't Chinatown, it was Japantown. And Japantown is the complete opposite of Chinatown. Everything is completely neat and orderly. And so I really started from, when I started over the second time, I started from his life and what he's got a lot of problems, as you'll find out. His father died. His father was an alcoholic. He died in an automobile accident. His mother was neurotic, and then his mother committed suicide, but his mother had been very controlling. And he's still got all that going on in his head. At the same time, he's trying to find himself as a 20-year-old who's dealing with working and relationships, and he still hasn't kind of figured out his parents yet. So all of that came before the story, and fitting that into the story wasn't necessarily easy, but it kept fitting itself in there. So that was good.
That sounds intriguing.
Yeah, every time I wrote about him, I kept on hearing his mother's voice yelling at him.
Oh.
It's like, because his mother was really controlling.
You wanted his voice. That's what it was. That was your character.
Starting off with a character profile, writing the background of the characters helps you a lot in establishing what the motivations are for the character, if nothing else. But you'll also create some backstory, and you may or may not use it in the actual story, but it gives you a better understanding of who you're writing about.
I've got hundreds of pages of, I think, really good writing that didn't fit in the story. That was really painful to tear out.
And that's normal.
But, you got to tear it out. But that actually was helpful in helping the parts where he's there, because I think he's pretty well formed.
I have entire manuscripts about one of my characters that I've never done anything with.
Right.
It's a normal process.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I got to the point where I had to know about the childhood and going through high school and college to understand the motivations this character had. And, I may do something with those stories in the future. I don't know. I mean, I've been working on them for since the COVID lockdowns and everything. I've been working on some of those stories. So we'll see.
Yep. I've got a whole, I've got about 50 pages of toaster motivation. I really know that toaster too. And
That's awesome.
He's a mean little toaster.
I already love this little toaster.
You won't like it. That was one of the problems with the toaster. Nobody likes him because he was a mean toaster.
See, I'm the opposite. I go for the mean toaster.
And then you've got a sneaky little Chihuahua.
Yes, who is the devil, but then the toaster thinks he's God is a very controlling biblical God, where the devil is actually sympathetic.
I can't wait.
But it's just way too complicated. It's hard to pull off. So give me another decade of experience.
It'll come to you.
It will. One day in a dream.
Come out and get published. He'll come out and get published.
Yes.
Yeah. Once you make it through publishing the To Kill a Unicorn book, once you get through that entire process, that book's going to get jealous of. And those characters are going to say, hey, he actually got a book published.
It's our turn. And I am God, so I get to decide what you do next.
Yep,
and then the Chihuahua starts barking.
Yeah, and biting. This Chihuahua bites a lot.
My aunt had a Chihuahua that could actually say Chihuahua.
Wow.
It was pretty amazing. She would get it to talk. I think that was about the only thing it ever said, but it was very
I
clear that
taught
it
my
was
dog
saying
to say
Chihuahua.
out. He can say out.
That's pretty good.
Yeah, he can. And he can say food. Two most important things, food and out.
Her dog also likes to eat glasses.
Yeah.
Ooh.
Elgon came up to Ohio one time. We were going on a trip. We went to Mackinac Island to try to secure a bookstore for one of our authors.
Mm-hmm.
And while he was staying here in my home, my little Staffordshire Terrier ate his glasses.
Wow.
Yeah. So we had.
Can you see better now?
So yeah. So yep, we got him some new glasses before we had it out.
Yeah, fortunately the glasses weren't. I mean, they're not expensive. I mean, they're just reading glasses. But
So you weren't blind without them, right?
I couldn't do anything up close because I'm farsighted. So.
Right, but you could survive. So my wife is very, very bad eyes. So she always says she needs a pair of glasses in the morning to help her find her glasses because she can't even see around her.
It's me. I have contacts, and
Yeah.
in the morning I have to like search for my glasses because I can't find them.
Right.
I used to work with a guy when I lived in Connecticut. He actually wore two glasses on lanyard, two pairs of glasses, one for close-up work and one for distance.
Yeah. Fortunately, my eyes aren't that bad, but I've got three different pairs. These are my computer glasses that I wear, for this distance, and I've got my reading glasses for this distance, and then I've got my far glasses for like watching television. And I guess I could just get some bifocals or trifocals, but like then you only get to see this little sliver. So I'm still with switching.
Yeah, they asked the last time I had my eyes examined. They asked me if I wanted to try bifocals because I'm at the age now where I have two different perception levels because my lenses have hardened enough. So I have computer glasses and reading glasses. And usually I use my computer glasses because most of the time I'm using a computer.
I'm old school, so when I read a book, which is pretty much every day, I read lying down in bed or on a chair, and I'm reading an actual book, and it's this close from me, so I need.
That's how I prefer to read.
During
the pandemic,
I love paperback books and
during the pandemic,
books.
I've gotten used to reading on my Kindle.
Yeah, so I'm in like 3 different book clubs, and it's interesting in the book clubs. It breaks down pretty evenly. About 1/3 of the people are old school like me, and these are all kind of people my age, or actually quite a few of them are older. That about 1/3 will read hard copy books so long as they can get it. About 1/3 will read the Kindle version, and then about 1/3 will do audiobooks on tape. It's pretty much evenly, but it's interesting when we discuss the books, you kind of have to say which way you experience the books, because sometimes the experiences are different, especially between the audio version and the written version. So I read magazines and news on my computer, on my cell phone, but I get used to skimming and I read quick. And when I read a novel, I want to sit there and I want to enjoy it, or history books. And it's just, I feel like I have to have it in my hand with paper to really kind of have that visceral enjoyment out of the book. Yeah. So actually, one of my first questions when I was talking to Zara and Alan at Pandamoon about kind of learning more about your books was, do you guys do printed books? Because as you know, a lot of the small publishers only do ebooks. And to me, ebooks are nice, especially for my audience, which I think is mostly going to be, it's geared towards Silicon Valley, startup people, programmers who are, kind of live electronic lives already. A lot of them may even be outside the US, like India, and they're used to reading electronic books. But for your own book, you really want a printed copy in your hand. You want something you can sign. You want something your parents can, they may not be able to go to Barnes and Noble anymore, but I can ship them a copy from Amazon. So that was important to me.
It's really something special when your books come in and you open that box and they're just there with your name on it, your title, your cover, and you hold that book. It is one of the best feelings in the whole world. So I cannot wait for that moment.
Yeah. So I've actually had 2 other nonfiction books published, one of which has stayed in print for something like 25 years, which is fantastic. It's a Japanese language textbook that when they shipped me my author's copies, I was just running around showing them to everyone, and I had my picture in the back. It's like, wow, this is great. I'm a real person now.
No, there's no smell like opening up a box of new books.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great thing.
Yes.
Having your name on it.
Definitely looking forward to that.
We have a guy that does a lot of our audiobooks. We don't have a large library of audiobooks out yet, but the ones that are out are really good. The ones that reach a certain sales threshold get considered for audiobooks. Sometimes it's just the subject matter and a general feeling that it's going to be a good book to convert over to audiobook. He reads the book with different character voices, so it's
Mike is fabulous.
Yeah, it's more like it's more like listening to like an old time radio program when you listen to the
right.
books. I mean,
Well, I definitely want to.
He's even experimenting with some sound effects, and he probably lives fairly close to you because he lives in Los Angeles area.
That makes a lot of sense. Being that we are the entertainment capital of the world, everyone I know around me is involved in the entertainment business except me. And yes, I really hope my book gets to that level that we do an audiobook because, in Los Angeles, nobody actually reads.
Yeah, Mike is fantastic. We will have to connect you two.